Not every business launched by college students is going to be a unicorn, but many successful entrepreneurs started something in college. Welcome to the StartNow College Entrepreneurship Series, bringing you the stories and lessons by people who didn't wait to chase their dreams. We want you to be inspired and go beyond. Don't wait and start now. I'm Lindsay Briggs, and I'll be moderating this session of Start Now. This week's guest is Peter Hébert.
Thank you for having me, Lindsay.
Of course. So let's just dive right into it. Can you just tell us about your entrepreneurship journey to Lux Capital?
Sure. So I guess really the start of the journey for me was actually when I was at Syracuse. And so I had originally gone to Syracuse to major in journalism at the Newhouse School. And I started there, I started taking classwork, and for whatever reason, the things that I thought I wanted to do, it really didn't connect. And so largely on a whim, I took a class in entrepreneurship. And for me, that entirely changed my life and my trajectory. And so when I was still at school, then I started the first entrepreneurship organization on campus called Future Business Leaders and Entrepreneurs. And really, the whole premise was that entrepreneurship was really a thought process, wasn't just an academic discipline. And so we ultimately launched a business plan competition, which continued for several years after. And that was really the start of the journey. And late 99, early 2000 launched Lux Capital. And so today we are a $4 billion venture fund focused on deep science and technology. This has been something that now has been a way of life for me, where I'm not just focused on creating the venture organization, which I have, but launching and investing in new companies on a regular basis. And now we have about 250 active investments across our funds.
That's just so amazing. Thank you for a little bit of background. And, it's all started on, Go Orange, the SU campus. So, and just even with this being the Start Now show and, encouraging college students and budding entrepreneurs to start now, you were the first person to start an entrepreneurship group at, Syracuse University. How has that building of relationships and not staying in your own industry or your own major really taught you how to be with people in your company as a leader and as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, as I shared before, the fundamental premise is entrepreneurship is a way of life, is a philosophy. It's something that you do. It's not a major. And so if you look at how most universities, including even historically Syracuse, but have structured themselves, as entrepreneurship is resident within the business school. So you could either study to be an accountant or you would study to be an entrepreneur. And I just disagree with that fundamentally. And so I wanted to start an organization that would welcome people like me, that would welcome people that had been focused on computer science and had an interest in, rather than just working for a large employer, creating something on their own. And so that really continues with everything that we do on a regular basis at Lux, where most of the entrepreneurs that we're investing in are technical. So they started with a degree in biology or chemistry or EE or computer science or any number of other academic disciplines and technical disciplines, but yet they have a desire to create something based upon their work. And so that is really the spirit of our firm, is to find those technical entrepreneurs, to partner with them, and to help them build meaningful businesses.
investing in the underdog who you wouldn't think would, you know, be a business, but that doesn't mean that, the idea is bad or wrong. You might just need the resources and the right people in your life to create, to get investment, to get capital, and to be successful in the business. Can you just talk about that part of the business that is really one of the core values of who Lux Capital is?
Yeah, I mean, for us, uh, the psychology is always the person that has a deep desire to prove others wrong and that has the chip on their shoulder, whether that's because people never saw them as who they thought they, wanted to become, or people that, that ultimately were dismissed by others as not being relevant or not having something that was of value.
And I think that's just really helpful for, college students who are looking for investors too. Like, you're hearing it firsthand from someone who's doing it, looking for those scrappy, resourceful, even with that type of information from an investor uh, like yourself. What would be some of the advice that you would give someone who is an aspiring entrepreneur in college right now?
Well, I think one of, there's a bunch of different elements, and it's not necessarily one prescriptive way to build a company or to get funding. But what appeals to me, what appeals to us, and probably a number of other investors is first and foremost initiative. So, the entire series is called Start Now for that reason, rather than just waiting or expecting that in a week, a month, a year, or a decade, it'll be the right time to create a company. If you have an extraordinary idea, if you have an amazing technology, and you believe that the world needs to see that, then the onus is on you to start now, to start building, and I think take that initiative and actually create. Something else that's really important is basically how creative, how clever are you as an entrepreneur, a founding team, to get in front of the right people. And so that's networking, using connections. You don't necessarily need to, have the luxury of having those existing connections. Most of the lucky breaks that I've gotten in life, were not something that I was naturally imbued with. It's something that just required my hard work and thinking about how can I ultimately find an opportunity that I can get my foot in the door. And to the extent that whenever I find college entrepreneurs who are able to get in front of me, whether it's direct outreach, where it's not a forum email, but it feels like it's genuine, it feels like someone actually understands what I like, what I've done, and it's not, hello, insert name. I would like to bring this great opportunity to you. But if you do the extra work, if you actually deliver something that's personalized and genuine, I think most people will respond to that.
Also, just, staying busy and doing the things like you did when you were in college. So you wrote for the Daily Orange, right? And that balance of, wanting to put in the hard work and laying the foundation for where you're going, but also, being a college student. I don't know if there was, fraternities, parties, hanging out with friends, but just what that balance looks like for somebody who really wants to be successful after their 4 years or even during their 4 years of college.
Yeah, well, success looks different across the board, and I can speak to my particular path, but there are other people that took wildly different paths and approaches in life and have been successful. And so, I am cognizant of the fact, and I am always aware that it's not one size fits all. And generally, if you are a good human being, if you have integrity, if you put positive energy into the world, if you work hard, if you do all these things, they get you 90% of the way there. So I do think, for me, balance has been important. It's helped me, I think, be more successful. But, in terms of success, I have seen lots of different profiles of people that had never been to a party in their life and were solely dedicated to one narrow area and they were extraordinarily successful, and those that were highly social, that had academic interest as well, but really balanced across the board. And they also, it feels like they're They're having rewarding lives, professionally successful. I always ask, whether it's students or people that are younger in their careers, you want to wake up and what do you want to do? What do you want to find yourself doing? Because it's less so about the position or the role or title that you occupy, and more, how do you want to spend your life? How do you want to spend your days? Who do you want to be surrounded with?
Yeah, I love that. I love that there's no exact measure of success. It's all about how you see it and how you see living your and pursuing your fulfilling your life's purpose. Can you talk to us a little bit, maybe tell us one story about a company that you and your company Lux Capital have invested in that is most has been most rewarding and memorable for you, and why?
It's a very hard choice to make. Similar to someone saying, "What is your, who is your favorite child?" But there have been a number of companies, and it's not always the most successful that we are proud of. Sometimes it's companies that had all the odds stacked against them, that persevered, that ultimately made it through. And even if it wasn't something that was a multi-billion-dollar outcome, we know, based upon the position that company was in, based upon all the challenges, what they did is something that we're proud of and will always remember. And so many of the best entrepreneurs that we've invested in, the prior company was something that was by some accounts a failure. And so that's something always psychologically we're looking for, those people that are resilient, that have been through turmoil and emerged stronger. I would say one that I'm particularly proud of is a company that had gone through very difficult periods but emerged extraordinarily successful, and really a new company. And the company is called Matterport. And that was something that we were a Series A early investor in, believed the entire way, but it went through several different management teams. It went through several different chapters of the story. And today, if you look at it, it's a business that's doing hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. Its product is used widely, not just in the United States, but throughout the globe, to provide digital twins, basically virtual 3D models of physical spaces like houses, offices, museums. But there were dark periods where it could have gone the other way. The company could have run out of money. It could not maybe have seen the kind of product traction that it did. And so I'm just incredibly proud. And I was somewhat of a helpful, supportive force, but really the people that were ultimately playing the game, the people that were in the company, the founders, the early employees, the executives that came on later. To me, I just have great pride in watching what they did, really accomplishing something that very few people saw coming.
That's so important, how you are able to overcome the adversity, because we know entrepreneurship is not for the faint at heart, right? It's a very up and down type of journey, and so you have to have that thick skin and initiative. So that was some real talk right there. Your space of being in the tech space and science space, but you coming in as a communications guy, how has that been a great asset for Lux Capital, and even like bridging the gap between science and communication, um, for the company itself and for um, potential businesses?
Well, intellectually honest enough to be able to say that I doubt that I would be hired had I applied for this company. So I needed to start Lux to ultimately probably have a secure job. Um, with that as the fundamental kind of backdrop, I think the reality is something that has actually been beneficial for me, and I think should be for others, is to really understand one's particular strengths and limitations. And so to better know and yourself as an individual, and where you think you are fundamentally advantaged, where you have an edge, and your gaps. And hopefully you can, as an individual, can be fortunate enough that you're in an organization, whether you're creating that organization or you're fitting in, where there are people that are able to fill the gaps that you have, and where you can kind of ultimately complement someone else that's there because they are relatively weak in a particular area where you are strong. And so for me, when I'm evaluating an opportunity, when an investment potential investment comes into Lux, I have the luxury of assuming that others in our organization will diligence the technology. And what I'm looking to do, and what I believe I have some fundamental edge versus the vast majority of people, is really the psychological read, understanding the human being and their motivations and their incentives, and making some assessment on that person's ability not just to execute, to operate the business, but can this person recruit other great people to the organization? Can they raise money in the future, which reduces financing risk for the company? And so that I happen to just have greater talent than many other areas of which I am completely deficient. But as a team, as an organization, we kind of really approach it as a team, and so we have a much more collaborative approach when we're doing diligence on a potential investment opportunity. And so we're trying for each member of the team has some unique viewpoint, different experience, different technical domain that ultimately makes us better, more informed decision makers.
Here we are. Hello. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. Can you go into like a little bit more detail about when you started Lux Capital and what was like the process of creating a business and getting financing, getting people to believe in you?
So we had not even really been working for a year. We joke that we had lots of friends and family, and none of them really had money. And so we needed to go out there and persuade people to bet on us. And today I can at least point to a body of evidence that would suggest that maybe I know what I'm doing. Certainly at that point in time, 21 years ago, I didn't have that. And so we would go out there and, I mentioned kind of tenacity and resilience and a lot of these fundamental traits. Like my experience has been, if you did not knock on 100 doors, you would not get one person to believe in you, because that was the fundamental starting point that we had. And so we didn't really know anything. We had these ambitions, but we were pretty naive. We were inexperienced. And at least initially, we didn't really have that many intelligent, experienced people advising us. That all came along the process. But the first thing we basically did was we incorporated the company. We went out there basically shaking trees for anyone that we thought would take a leap of faith on us. And so throughout our careers, starting with absolutely nothing, incorporating the company, going out there and basically effectively begging, hat in hand, will you help us reach this objective? There have been people that have been willing to invest in us, and our goal has always been to make sure that they were, incredibly well rewarded, which has been the case.
Great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We have Sarah next, and she has a question for you.
Hi, Peter. Thank you very much for being here today. My question is, in the technical space, it seems like there's a lot of information and knowledge to know. Are there any publications or sources that you use to stay up to date on the new trends or what's emerging in this field?
So my job is, it's a great question. It's quite relevant because my job is effectively to consume through a fire hose information, data, anecdotes, gossip. That is all I do every day. And so I am a prodigious reader, books, magazines, emails, blogs, podcasts, various email newsletters. And then all day I'm talking to people, entrepreneurs who are telling me their view of the future, investors who are telling me confidentially what deal is about to happen, investment bankers who are telling me what large public companies are looking to buy. And so all I'm trying to do is basically ingest information, apply some level of kind of analysis personally with whatever mental models I have to bring to bear, and then make judgments, whether that's judgments about people that are coming in and whether I think they will be successful, whether that's judgments of technologies or companies. But I would not say that there is, one, two, or three, but I am processing probably 500 different streams of information. And ultimately, I have to handicap which one I think has greater signal, which one I basically, in my own mind, mute. And so the more, in my mind, the merrier. And I just think, you just need to be able to understand, and a lot of it just comes with experience. What has signal, which is a word that we use a lot in the venture and technology world, and what doesn't. Basically, what is resonant that you want to pay attention to, whether it's, I'm doing diligence on a prospective entrepreneur. I could read what that person has done in a newspaper clipping. I could speak to someone that worked for them. I can speak to an investor that invested in their prior business. But I'm ultimately trying to figure out what are the things that I should tune into, and what are the pieces of information or data streams that I should say less relevant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What are your biggest sources of learning while you continue in your ventures?
We have basically, right now, probably since inception, there are effectively 300 stories, adventures that we have been part of, that we have had front row seats and tickets to, and where active decision making on our part has either created hopefully more success, but sometimes led to less desirable results. And so, pattern recognition is always dangerous to rely upon a smaller end than the universe, right? It's like there are far more than the 300 that we've been involved with. There are probably hundreds of thousands in venture-backed startups, or maybe millions. But I think that's really valuable. Like, I believe experience has led me to be more balanced in terms of understanding, appreciating the highs and lows, not getting too concerned when things look bleak, basically waiting for the miracle to then occur. And when things are really great, my natural instinct is, well, I've seen this movie before, wait for some shoe to drop, because it's basically never as good as it seems, and it's never as dour or bleak during the lows. And so being able to have that perspective, I think, makes me a better advisor, makes me a better investor to entrepreneurs that are living that real time for probably the first time. And through my own experience, starting in 2000, where it for the first couple of years felt so bleak, felt so depressing at times, when it was unclear that we would survive. I feel that I can be a better mentor to younger entrepreneurs and help guide them through that process, because it is really sometimes damaging for mental health unless you're prepared for that, unless look, to use the Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. It feels like that. Like, you go in there, you're prepared, you think you know what you're going to do, and then ultimately, adversity or sometimes hilarity, ensues. And so that's just something that, having seen that many, many times now, and there are people that are several decades older than me that, you could add some exponential increase to the number of sequences they've seen. I just think that's super helpful.
For sure. For sure. Thank you so much, Peter, for all of the insight and sharing your journey and story with us. Just as an alum of Syracuse University, of Newhouse, and I would like to thank you for making the StartNow series possible through your generosity. So we thank you so, so, so much.
My pleasure. Pleasure to be here. Hopefully, the things that I would say, well, I will summarize. One, there's really nothing beyond your own initiative and own desire that prevents you from starting a company. There's always some reason that people say you'll be more experienced in doing something 1, 5, 10 years later. The reality is, so much of this you figure out real time. And so I'm a huge believer in the West Coast mentality here, that there's no shame in failure, even if something that you create doesn't work out, as long as you're learning from that. And whether you decide to then start something after that, or you decide to go into the traditional pursuit, you will have come away with learnings and experience that most other people will not, and that's of real value. And so I just think it's an incredibly rewarding experience to be an entrepreneur, to be a founder, to be associated with the creation and kind of building of new enterprise. And it's something that obviously you should expect me to say, because I have kind of dedicated my own life to that pursuit.
Thank you for all of this valuable information and just sharing your story, unapologetically and authentically with StartNow. And we encourage all entrepreneurs to not think about it, but to start now, so you learn from the journey. So thank you so much. And join in next time on our Start Now series.